CPEC, the talk of the town, is the multi-billion Chinese investment in the region really going to change the lives of the people in Balochistan? Or, in the war of titans, the Baloch are going to suffer even further? There are so many questions, but not so much on the public domain about this secretive mega project. To understand the project and its regional implications, we spoke in detail with the famous author and political scientist Ayesha Siddiqa. We asked if CPEC really is the game changer as it's portrayed.
Game changer, yes. I mean, look, it is a game changer for the larger area and for Pakistan. Now, game changer is both a positive and a negative. It has negative and positive connotation. When we say game changer, it does not necessarily mean that it's going to have a positive impact. The fact is that it's going to have some impact. And it's a game changer because what we see with BRI, with CPEC, which is part of the Belt Road, China's Belt Road initiative, that Pakistan is slowly and gradually shifting away from an American-led strategic coalition towards China. And there are a number of reasons why this has happened. It's happened because in the foreseeable future, because of what we see as the coming conflict between United States and China, which is played out between also in the form of conflict between China and India, we'll see Pakistan drifting more towards China. And CPEC, which had slowed down, will probably grow. At what pace, I'm not sure. But yes, it's a different dynamics in play that's going to happen. How far Pakistan is going to benefit, I'm not sure about that. I'm even not sure about that, because there's going to be kleptocracy. Very clearly, the consultancies that are being programmed, that are built into CPEC project by the CPEC authority, I'm not sure there's going to be a lot of merit around it. You're going to have former bureaucrats, military and civil, coming, taking jobs. How much will Balochistan benefit? How much will ordinary Pakistan benefit? That's a very different question. I think it needs more introspection. Now, the West, Europe, United States, UK, had been telling Pakistan that there is going to be a huge cost for engaging with CPEC, that there's going to be a huge debt burden, and they will not be able to repay loans owed to the Chinese government, because, mind you, major component of CPEC is not grants but loans, and these are commercial loans. So what the message, General Bajwa's message to the British government in 2018 and 19 was, give us money and we'll forget CPEC. And he told the British government that, look, we are much more linked with the West than with China. So if you give us money, if you kind of restart the same kind of financial, have the same kind of financial linkage as it was when Pakistan was a frontline state for United States, then we'd probably be willing to forget China and de-invest our interest in CPEC. Now that didn't happen. Nobody was really ready to give Pakistan that kind of money. 2019, very interesting. When General Bajwa went to the US with Imran Khan, the main meeting was not between President Donald Trump and Imran Khan. The main meeting was in fact between General Bajwa and Donald Trump. And again, it was the same messaging. But primarily, nothing, financially there were no benefits, and therefore the project slowed down. Pakistan, in short, Pakistan tried its best to kind of message to the West that if there was an alternative given to it, then they could probably look away from CPEC. That hasn't happened so far. What China is doing is that it's securing its own region, South China Sea, Hong Kong. It has got control over it. It's interested again. Its historic claim over Taiwan. So it wants all of that. It wants to be recognized as a global power. So that is happening. It's already taking place. But the main strategy behind it is using its economic strength to influence, to buy into countries. So from Africa to Asia to South Asia to Latin America, China is extending itself. And what happens is, according to this particular strategy, the recipient states then have stakes in siding with China and siding with and taking a position and using its military for Chinese benefit. Let there be no doubt about it that yes, the reason China got interested in Gwadar is because it needs an alternative, it needs that access to an alternative port in the region. It's picking and it's building ports in the region which it can access in case of a larger conflict with the United States. So there's Hambantota in Sri Lanka. There's Gwadar in Pakistan, and I think in Aden itself, it's picked up a port. So it's and if the agreement between China and Iran comes through, then you have Chabahar as well. So what China is doing, it's picking up these ports where it can have access, where its navy can come and access. Now, so far, there are visits, but not an active activity as you see in case of Americans. I mean, Americans build bases, military bases. China is not doing it. What's doing it is allowing itself, building facility it could access in case of a conflict.
In your book, Military Incorporated, you have uncovered how deeply Pakistani military is involved in economic activities. Do you think the same will be the case with the projects related to CPEC?
Well, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, if you've noticed very recently, when CPEC started, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor was meant to be a civilian project. And in fact, the way it was conceptualized in 2015-16 during Nawaz Sharif government, it was a civilian project. And one of the problems that occurred between the military leadership and Nawaz Sharif government was the military wanted to control the project, which ultimately it has managed to do. So what we've seen in the last couple of years is that the construction projects, for example, Frontier Works Organization, other military companies are very much partnering with China in construction, in development. That's one. Pakistan's military companies, FWO, Fauji Foundation, have registered interest in mining. So it's very likely that when those projects come about, it seems that China is interested in Reko-Dik. I mean, besides the Reko-Dik copper mine, so besides Sandek, which China is already mining, it has interest in Reko-Dik. That's a separate topic, and we could talk about it later. But definitely that. But I think what's more noticeable and important is that now CPEC, there is the CPEC authority, which Nawaz Sharif government had constantly tried to push back. Now we have a CPEC authority. And if you look at the draft of CPEC authority, which is controlled by a retired Lieutenant General, General Asim Bajwa, it is so powerful that's almost like a government unto itself. When we used to cry about ISI being a state within a state, the Pakistan Army being a state within a state, now you have CPEC, another state within a state. And Pakistan military's power has grown phenomenally in the last 50, 60 odd years. And in fact, in the past 5 to 10 years, we have become more like China in many ways, much more oppressive, much more authoritarian. There is silencing of all dissent, which is very much replicating what China does. But it's not that Chinese are telling Pakistan to do it. Pakistan is copying those patterns and adopting it. And I think what is a matter of greater concern is that the secrecy laws that are being applied on CPEC authority, it will have direct implications for ordinary Baloch people. You could basically pick up anyone on the pretext that they have access to information regarding CPEC projects and CPEC authority and basically punish them. So what we see is that definitely military is trying to get greater control of CPEC projects.
Do you think CPEC would be different and it will basically benefit the people of Balochistan?
See, how CPEC will impact Balochistan and Baloch people. Let me draw your attention towards a very interesting fact that in CPEC, in the overall project, I believe Balochistan has a share of about 7 to 9%. I'm forgetting the exact figure, it's either 7% or 9%. But in the past 3-4 years since the project started, only $200 million have been invested in Balochistan, very little. Most of the work is in Gwadar, most of the work is in projects, smaller projects which are critical to China. So for one, despite that allocation, very fewer resources have come to Balochistan, firstly. Secondly, as we have recently seen, CPEC authority, Lieutenant General Asim Bajwa has announced consultancies and internship, and he has said that there's not going to be any quota. Now, not having a quota for Balochistan basically means that you can forget about ordinary Baloch actually gaining from it. And what we see here is a project. The conceptualization and implementation is done in a way that you'll have a lot of outsiders coming into Balochistan. There'll be a greater security environment, which means that practically Balochistan will become a security state / security province. China had wanted to send its own troops and its own forces to protect Chinese investment wherever there was Chinese investment or Chinese projects. Pakistani military said, no, we're going to do it ourselves. So there is about a 12,000 strong force, CPEC force, which is doing the job. Now just imagine if Chinese were going to come, they're going to be much more brutal. I'm not saying that the Pakistani forces are not brutal as far as Baloch are concerned, but there's going to be doubly, Chinese are going to be doubly brutal. As far as militancy is concerned, as far as Baloch rights are concerned, I think this is a time when Baloch need to think about multiple ways to engage the world. The world needs to give attention to what's happening. I would see that there's going to be more oppression, not less. Now, what does it mean? And in the past few years, what we've seen is definitely, I think there are two things which are important to understand. One is that in the past few years, what we've seen is really a lot of oppression against Baloch nationalists. Baloch, it's not remain very easy for Baloch nationalists to fight the political battle. I mean, I think one of the issues is the Baloch nationalists have not been, they've been fighting a militant battle, less of a political battle. So that has become more difficult. And secondly, another development, which is, I think here it's very important to note, is the developments in Afghanistan, next door Afghanistan. If the peace process, if the peace deal, United States Taliban peace deal comes together and Taliban become part of Kabul administration, then I'm sure there will be much more pressure on Baloch nationalists. It's not going to be easy. And so I think these are some of the factors that need to be thought about. I think this is a time that Baloch need to kind of present their struggle, their issues as a human rights in a political matter. I think that's where it will have more traction. You have lots of stories to tell. There are disappearances, there are human rights atrocities which are, I mean, unbelievable. These are the stories which need to be heard and told to the world for people around the world to exert pressure on the Pakistani state. The Baloch need to be saved. It's always the state which is the cause of a militant movement. Once people think that there is no dialogue, that's when they take up arms. So I see the justification for that. I'm not saying that there is no justification. The Pakistani state has been oppressive, it has been very selective. But there is also a fact that within larger Balochistan, one needs to also think what happens when you have bulk of Baloch leaders themselves, Baloch politicians, Baloch leaders who are partners of the Pakistani state. So one needs to look at that too. I mean, while I can insist, while I can shout and cry and say that Punjab is eating my rights, so is my own leadership. So it's a double-edged, it's a fight in two directions. I mean, it's something that needs to be thought about as well. I mean, look, the stories one has heard. I mean, I remember talking to Baloch men, women in the state bureaucracy, mind you. I remember those conversations. They were like, look, we are from Makran. We've got nothing to do with Dera Bukti. And yet, when we look at the way Pakistan's military, its security agencies come and trample upon us, we are so upset, we are so angry. And I completely sympathize. So I can not even begin to imagine the humiliation that ordinary Baloch go through every time they're stopped at checkpoints. I can understand, I can pretend to understand. Why I say I can, and the reason I say I can pretend to understand is because I've not even remotely experienced what people go through. So I can sympathize with this argument, and I can sympathize with this thing that how state pushes people towards oppression, how state oppression actually pushes people towards conflict, towards towards militancy. All I'm saying is that this story has to be told differently. There are multiple ways in which any movement needs to engage. While you're doing your militancy, you have to have a political movement to back it up with. If you don't do it, your militancy is not going to work. And I would, if I were the Pakistani state, I would start seriously engaging the Baloch investing in their betterment, investing in their education and their overall well-being. Does Pakistani state, does its military, does CPEC authority have that inclination? So far, it doesn't seem that is the case. The whole idea of not having a quota for Baloch means that they want to bypass, they don't want to be wasting their time with investing in Baloch people. So that is a matter of concern. I mean, that is where I would find it extremely problematic. But it has to happen. And what it then means that if there is a counter investment from America in Baloch nationalism, which is also likely, then basically the Baloch people are going to get trampled over from both sides. Overall, it's not a very encouraging picture for Baloch.